Sometime before the end of the 5th century, a monk called Kieran founded a monastery at a place called Seir in a gently sloping valley beside the Foran River.
When you take a step back and you look at the story of Kieran, it's more than even 1500 years. So the places of worship are very much linked in paganism. You have rag trees, you have Holy Well, you have Seir, probably coming from Fountain of Kieran, wherever that original water source came. This is Christianity being morphed onto paganism when Kieran comes in, because they knew that was the only way they'd get the buy-in of the population, make it tangible to them. So really the antecedents of this place lie, pre-Christ. And Lord knows how long they're going to carry into the future, hopefully for many more generations.
In a way, I think of the site as having been a sleeping giant, because it has a lot of potential, a lot of things to attract people, a lot of things to interest people.
Can you tell me a little bit about Seir Kieran?
It's a small parish in Offaly. There's a school, there's a church, and there's hairdresser, beauticians.
The story goes that Seir Kieran was told by Patrick to walk with his bell held in one hand, and when it rang, that was the place that he was to build his monastery. And so Bell Hill got its name, and Kieran established a monastic site that flourished. Today we can find evidence of high crosses, a round tower, and the site must have generated significant wealth as the Vikings raided here in the 9th century. And most tantalising of all is the Gospel of St. Kieran that vanished sometime in the 14th century. While Catholics and Protestants have coexisted on the site peacefully, in the early 1950s the Protestant tradition of honouring Seir Kieran on the first Sunday of March aroused the curiosity of a young local.
The Church of Ireland used to have a service of a Sunday morning here, and we, of course, at that time, thanks be to God, things have moved on. That time we shouldn't be going there. And we used to come up across to listen to the music.
The Catholics would honour Kieran on March 5th with a pilgrimage around Kieran's Well and a rag tree. And years later, Willie was delighted when he convinced UCD Professor of Archaeology Murish O'Sullivan to investigate the site.
It was a kind of music to my ear to see that somebody else outside the place was taking an interest in it and exploring it or trying to unlock what was here. And from that point of view, it was great. And an awful lot, the people appreciated it. Murish went on to do meetings at night above in the hall, and I think there was 4 or 5 different nights done. And the place was crowded because, in a way, you see, we'd be aware of Clonmacnoise, but Seir Kieran wasn't on the agenda at all. And they began to realise, well, look, we have something here.
Seir Kieran is what unifies the two traditions.
Both the Roman Catholic and the Church of Ireland are the smallest parish in Ireland. The local community were very good to us. And even going back 3 years ago, here, the place outside, the graveyard and the site itself was got into bad disrepair, and 90% of what people that are buried out there are Roman Catholic. There's very few Church of Ireland buried out there. So we got together at that time and we cleaned up, around them headstones was all bushes and things falling on top of them and debris and a lot of things. And we had a big work party here. It went on for bits of evenings for 3 months.
Isn't it interesting that the Church of Ireland continue to have this site a place of worship each Sunday? They gather here and to pray and to acknowledge the same Kieran, and that is the great, to me, unifying factor that we must always reach out to. What unifies us? Too often we talk about what separates us or divides us, and there's a great spirit and bond of unity, of Christian unity here on this site.
Offaly County Council have also now got involved to help preserve and examine the full extent of what lies beneath.
We have this year commenced a conservation programme under the Community Monuments Fund, which is the new funding scheme, which provides funding towards researching and preparing programmes of work, and then hopefully next year we will be able to apply for funding to carry out the work. And obviously there's a lot of work that could be done, but the immediate phase of work that we want to look at is the boundary wall, which is complex because unlike other burial grounds where maybe the burial wall is built later in one phase in the late 1800s, this burial wall incorporates lots of elements of earlier buildings. So it's a very significant burial wall.
Now in some places it's not too bad, in some places they're decaying quite quickly. So Offaly County Council have commissioned, with the support of the Community Monuments Fund, an impact assessment to sort of come up with a conservation strategy. So there's been a conservation engineer out here from David Kelly and Partners. There's been an ecologist checking there's no rare species in the walls. And this is all with a view to next year hopefully getting more funding to get the most historically significant parts of those walls and the walls that are in danger of the most decay conserved. So as we look at it now, you can see just behind the yew tree in the back, to the my sort of immediate back to the left, is a church building, and just at the bottom right corner, my bottom left, sorry, I should say, there's another set of medieval buildings there as well. And we know these buildings, or even in the dissolution in the 16th century, it's recorded that a lot of these buildings were still on site. It's not just a boundary wall, there's a lot there and there's a lot to be secured for future generations.
Part of this year's funding went towards working with those future generations.
So on Monday we had a virtual session with them, and we talked to them about high crosses and Celtic art and the meaning of different symbols. And we also looked at panels of high crosses where the central message is normally in the centre of a high cross. And then after that I went and met all the kids and the principal, Jonathan. He was brilliant, and we came down to the site and we talked about the historical significance of the site and various different elements and stories from the site. And then the students had to go back and design their own high cross panel and either put a story that was important to the site or a story that was important to their community. So a lot of hurling came back, because obviously that's central to Clareen's history. And then they came today and we made our own high cross, and we basically continued the story of scripture and teaching at Seir Kieran. So the students came out and taught us what they knew about the place, and we taught them what we knew from an archaeological point of view, and all this was done around a replica high cross. So it was a really lovely interactive workshop where everybody was learning from everyone, and I certainly know more about Clareen's hurling pedigree than I did 10 hours ago.
So this is a picture of me and my daddy playing hurling for Seir Kieran.
It's some people going to our church.
St. Patrick gave a bell to Kieran, and Kieran was walking up the hill, and then the bell rang for him. So then that's why.
Is that where he put his monastery?
Yeah, the school come together and do a play every year. We couldn't do it recently because of COVID.
Oh.
But all the community come and watch the play.
My name's Fionn.
Hey, Fionn.
This is a picture of when
A past pupil of Clareen Primary School is legendary hurler Eugene Coughlin.
Yeah, actually it was a good group of lads at that time, and before the lunch break then we'd be picking a team, of course, to that we wouldn't let the teacher see us, so we'd have a team picked and ready to go once we had the lunch eaten. So that was the best part of the schooling at that time, getting out to play.
And bringing home the All-Ireland in 1981 evoked images that would not have been out of place here in medieval times.
It was actually brilliant coming back to a little parish, a crossroads of a parish really, and to be able to bring the Liam McCarthy back. And actually we gathered up there at the gates of the monastic site, and the captain gave me the cup, the Liam McCarthy, on a truck, and we drove down from the gates above down to the parish, and just across the way there, Bell Hill, the club members and the parish had a bonfire lighting, so it was absolutely gorgeous to look over across and see a bonfire lighting at the edge of Bell Hill bush, and of course all the kids and everyone gathered at the cross. It was something I'll never forget. It was a lovely homecoming.
My favourite story is the one you just hinted at, where his first disciples were animals of the forest and he sent them to work, so the boar had to sort of root up and help found the monastery, but the fox sort of the sly reputation as well deserved made off of the sandals, and the badger was meant to sent off and effectively teach the fox the lesson. So the accounts of the saints, because they're written a long time later, and there's this beautiful mesh of folk belief, paganism, Christianity and fact, and it's lovely to try and penetrate them and see. I mean, I doubt Kieran lived 300 years, but maybe there's something in the water here, who knows.
When Seir Kieran first came to Clareen, he started off from humble beginnings. But what has happened here since then speaks to proud local traditions, faiths mixing peacefully, and stories for the ages. Thanks to that same spirit today, allied with state funding and professional expertise, the future for Seir Kieran looks bright.